I'd like to introduce our guest today, Dr. Fei-Fei Li. I initially met Fei-Fei, I guess, 2.5 years ago, leading the Stanford AI lab. So she's a professor of AI at Stanford and again runs the lab there. And then earlier this year joined Google as their chief scientist of AI in the Google Cloud. So welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah.
So, the intent, I think, of this discussion, from my viewpoint, is that there's been a lot of, I think, sometimes hype, sometimes real, kind of advances around AI and ML. And from moving from the academic side and starting to get exposure, especially at a place like Google, on the applied side of AI and ML, what are some of the things that kind of surprised you, like moved in that transition as you're getting kind of up to speed at Google?
That's a great question, Mike. So I've been at Google for 2 months. And it's actually the first time I took a deep dive into the industry. I'm very fortunate to have that sabbatical opportunity. So I think a couple of things that really surprised but also excites me. One thing is that as a technologist, I've been doing AI for almost 20 years. And in the early days, I started AI as an undergrad and PhD student and then professor. In the early days, this is such a niche, small, academically driven problem. It's an intellectual pursuit. And then gradually, this generation witnessed this technology, at least this wave maturing and making impacts and solving real-world problems. So our dream of AI started also to grow in that process. And I came to the realization in the past few years that we're going to, a lot of people call the fourth industrial revolution. And I have absolutely no doubt that AI is one of the biggest driving force of the industrial revolution, where automation and many things are changing the way humans live and work. But there has always been a question for me right around the time that I was considering my sabbatical at industry is, how do we democratize this technology? So there are many reasons we want to democratize. First of all, it's a good thing. A lot of it is a good thing. We want humanity to benefit from it. Second is, I think that I would not want AI to be in the hands of a few privileged and elite. By democratizing, it helps us to really focus on the benevolent effects of AI. And this is where cloud comes in. It took me a while, but I started to realize that cloud is the biggest computing platform humanity has ever created. And cloud, what is computing today? Computing is to make your data speak intelligently and act intelligently to solve your problem or your customer's problem. So really, the marriage between AI and cloud is like this perfect vehicle to democratize AI.
Do you think that in this fourth wave, as you put it, which is, I think, a fantastic way to describe it, is it being driven then by compute, by, let's say, some of these advances around using convolutional neural nets? And then is it also the tagged labeled data? Or what are the kind of big factors that have also resulted in
a convergence,
the kind of, the very large noise or in some signal, which I'll talk about in a bit, in this space?
I think you pointed out, I think the three major factors are the compute and the hardware. Not only the huge infrastructure that cloud can provide, but also the GPUs, the many advances in hardware. Then 20 years ago, internet brought us gradually the big data movement. And big data and the availability of labeled and annotated big data is the second factor. And then the third factor is advances of the algorithms. That is what I think academia have been doing in the past. AI has been a field of almost 5 to 6 decades, but in the past 20 years. So these three factors converged and brought us today's AI, and cloud will be the vehicle to democratize it.
One of the things, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing myself. So I'm a general partner at Kleiner Perkins.
Yep.
I probably meet with 15 companies a week. Probably out of those 15, call it 10 of the 15 use the terms AI, ML. And what's kind of disappointing at times, maybe disappointing all the time, is a majority of those actually, when you push on their claims, either don't really understand what they're saying, or I'm really not using AI and ML.
They probably want your attention.
Yeah, and so, because and unfortunately there's a lot of money in the ecosystem, and so some of these companies will probably get kind of invested in. How do we kind of get past that noise? And we've got many founders, entrepreneurs in the audience that likely are, in some cases, doing real AI ML. How from your perspective, especially coming back to you, how do we kind of get that signal above the noise, because it is kind of a noisy area right now?
Right. I think there's a couple of things, especially, you and I have been working together in the Stanford AI Lab Entrepreneur Club for students, and so I've been also learning a lot from the venture capital world. I think a couple of things I would tell startup founders. One is that still think about your problem. Focus on the problem. Focus on the problem you want to solve. That is the entry point to everything. Think about what products you want to deliver to your problem and to your customers, to your users, and once you have that, start thinking about the data. I think when you talk to a founder, CEO, it's really important to see if they have a good grasp of what data they have and how do they use their data. That is so important. That's the beginning of AI ML. You cannot speak AI ML in a vacuum.
Can I interrupt
Yes.
your list there? On the data side, do you think that over time, the groups or companies that have the largest corpus of tag data, is that where the IP is going to really sit?
Part of it is that the companies with the big data and tags are going to win, part of it. Yeah. But on the other hand, there's so much opportunity because these big companies are not going to go deep into verticals or specific areas. There's still a lot of opportunity for. Point. And also this is where the creativity of a startup comes in. How do you snowball your data? You have to have a clever design of the product and engagement with your whatever consumer or partner, so that as you begin that process, your product, you design into the product the snowballing effect of data, right? So that's not just data per se. You can not always assume that, okay, I start the company with all this data.
And therefore, somehow it's valuable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you have to have a strategy.
Yeah. It's a little bit like, otherwise every Kaggle competition would be very valuable.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's one thing, data. The other thing is, I guess, if a company truly understand data, truly understand the value of data analytics, then they should invest in a good, depending on the product, data scientists, AI, machine learning experts. And that's where homework needs to be done.
So let's push on that a little, especially kind of tied to number one. So I totally agree with you on focusing on the problem. Yeah. And you and you mentioned that, like every other week, spending time with some of your grad students on what are the opportunities and applications. And, we have this, on one side of the spectrum, we mentioned kind of the noise. And then we can have the other side of the spectrum, which is the PhD student, or the person who finished, I can say this as a PhD dropout, where he or she feels like they've got a hammer, right, and everything looks like a nail, right? And so you can kind of, and especially in this area when you're building a company, you just want to solve the problem. You're not in love with the algorithm or the approach. I'd love to hear about how do you kind of give guidance to the folks in the audience around that, as well as how do you hire someone in the area that and kind of mitigate this risk that they're not just in love with their thesis paper or their approach?
So I don't know, Mike, there is one singular answer, because sometimes that tremendous hammer vision, the technology vision does create such a long arc that no one have seen the usage, and we should push on that technology. I mean, in a way, Google started as a search engine where the product vision was not yet mature, yet that technology drove that. So sometimes those opportunities do exist. But also I agree with you that many times technologists who want to go solve a real world problem have to develop that empathetic understanding of the problem and what you want to deliver. Just staying at the thesis, dissertation, paper level is not enough. It's really important to combine that with empathetic, a discipline to really force yourself to be empathetic about it.
I think that's right. When you kind of look at the discussions you're having with students, I mean, maybe we should get recruited out from Facebook and Google or to some autonomous driving car company or some new startup. What's the guidance that you give your students on how to either have that discussion around a problem with a potential customer or find a co-founder to that? Because they recognize the fact that, hey, I'm a technologist, I need to find a product person or a business person.
That's why I bring you guys in to talk to them.
I don't have all the answers, though.
So I tend to tell students that, first of all, I'm a professor, so I first tell them, go be a professor. So that's my first, but if they say, no, I absolutely have to do a startup, I say, okay, let me help you. I have good friends I can introduce you to. But I think it's really about, I tell them, take away the romance. It's, when you really dive into a startup world as a technologist, try to take all the fluff of the romance out and really get to the ground, focus on the technology, on the problem, and try to recognize that you don't know everything, as a technologist, and seek guidance or mentorship or help or partners that can complete that picture for you to really, at the end of the day, is about delivering what your customer and users want. It's not about that one line of equation that is very flashy.
So I promised you beforehand to not dive too deep into Google, but I mean, clearly your world, globally recognized as a leader in AI, had many different opportunities, I'm sure, during your sabbatical to go. Why Google?
Thanks for asking that
question. Sorry, I have to ask that.
That's a good question. I actually did take some time to think about it. I was fortunate enough to have multiple opportunities. I think at the end of the day, it was what I just said. I want to democratize AI. I really believe this technology is so important for the entire humanity that we shouldn't keep it in the hands of a few. And when I think about, from an industry point of view, how we democratize AI, we should really think about all the important verticals today that can benefit from AI. In Silicon Valley, we tend to have a little bit of a myopia or just skewed view about industries, about high tech or self-driving cars and social media. But really, if you look at the world, there is finance, healthcare, education, manufacturing, agriculture, just government. There are so many vertical sectors that would benefit from this technology. And if once I arrive at that conclusion, I want the best platform to democratize AI. The answer is so clear, that cloud is the best platform. And Google is a company with the deepest AI technology and the cloud. So
then the conclusion.
Right.
So I share with you the vision and the opportunity and the excitement there. One of the kind of obvious implications, though, is there may be a lot of displaced jobs potentially as a result of some of these. How do you think about it? With what you can comment from Google Cloud, how do we solve that problem? In terms of we've got a lot of displaced workers, we retrain, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important topic, and as an AI person, I think we all have responsibility to think beyond just the technology or the codes, but into the social implication. I want to quote you one fact. When ATM machines are introduced to the banks, which is a way to automate a lot of bank tellers' jobs. Right now, you just go to the machine and do the basic thing. The number of tellers in US banks has increased, not decreased. And that's a single small example to show when certain jobs are being replaced by machines, humans, we have a tendency to create more different jobs to make the service better, to make the product better, to reach deeper into the needs of consumers. So today's bank tellers do things that are a little more fun, higher level than just processing checks and giving you the cash. So I think this is where we need to be going collectively as a society. I'm not an economist, I'm not a policymaker, but we try to bring that voice to the ears of the policymakers, is that it is time to think about how AI is going to impact jobs.
Yeah.
The drivers, the bank tellers,
let's lean into
the
that
paralegals.
and actually look at the opportunities that are created versus just standing back in fear.
We need to proactively start thinking about that. My hunch is that the world this is a growing pie. I guess I'm an optimist. This is a growing pie. This is not a zero-sum game. And we need to be growing this pie together.
So, if I'm a company in the audience and I have some ideas around what AI or ML could potentially do with my product and impact my customer, what kind of guidance can you give from helping companies either vet or recruit those folks to compete with your current employer? Which is a little bit, maybe put you in an awkward position, but it's a question I get a lot. It's I need this data scientist, but I can't find he or she, or how do I vet this guy? I don't have a PhD in the area. Yeah.
Do your homework.
What kind of homework is that?
So there are many things. Look at their degrees, look at what they have done, look at, even if someone doesn't have a formal machine learning or data science degree, there are so many online courses, Kaggle, there's, developers forums, look at what they have done, their GitHub can have, depending on what kind of talent you're looking for, but if you're looking for that machine learning engineer, you need to do your due diligence and see what they have produced. Talk to your engineers, talk to your VCs, talk to your mentors. I think at the end of the day, it's about that CEO or that co-founder or founder doing his or her homework.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just thinking, one of the things that you and I have talked about before, and I've certainly talked with other professors at Stanford, is periodically we see startups or even larger companies that have this really interesting data set or corpus, and they can't hire these data scientists. And at the same token, on the academic side, there's always a desire to refine the problems, helps with grants, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts on how we can better connect that linkage of the private sector and academia, where there may be people that want to go be a professor, but there is this incredible data set, let's say from this commerce company, that may have difficulty hiring?
Well, first of all, consider cloud. Come to cloud.
Yeah.
There is more and more startups and Fortune 500 companies using the cloud, because one of the values we provide at Google Cloud is that we do the computing and solve some of your problems for you, right? Not everybody has to be a ninja in everything.
But to dig it a little bit deeper, so I agree on the compute, but when we start talking about feature engineering and building models for a unique problem, I don't know if Google will necessarily help with that.
Actually, it does. I don't want to be just Google-centric, but let me push back a little bit. If you look at some of the AI product we offer on the cloud, it's exactly, first of all, deep learning takes away feature engineering. That's part of the revolution of deep learning. Machine learning that preceded deep learning takes more nuanced expertise to into the problem, and you really need to know how to do feature engineering. But deep learning, made that a lot easier and better. Second is that cloud, through the APIs and other, at Google we even have a lab that brings people into the lab to work with you hand in hand to look at your data, formulate your problem and solve the problem. So there is a lot of services we do provide. I think collaboration in this world is so connected. Sometimes as a startup you need to, or company.
And not to put you on kind of the sales spot, but I mean, Microsoft has a pretty rich offering in Azure and ML too.
Yeah.
So how should I think about Google versus Microsoft, or should I try both to see what works best for me, or?
So I said earlier, I decided to join Google as an AI technologist because Google has the best AI technology. And if you look at what Google and Alphabet
well, you
in
voted
general,
with your feet, so that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, exactly. I did vote with my feet. From what Google Brain, DeepMind, rest of Google research, I think that deep technology, and today some of Google's own products are running on Google's deep learning technology. I think that speaks volume about
That's true.
that.
There's a lot of documenting there.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're out of time, but Fei-Fei, thank you so much for coming.
Mike.
And I think it's phenomenal that you're at Google working with Diane, and can't wait to see what you and your team build. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.